How many of you have seen something on social media that made you angry? Maybe it was political. Maybe it was someone telling you how you should feel about a particular issue, somebody labeling you. Think back to the last time that happened. How did you respond? Did you reply? Did you argue with the person? Did you share the content? Because that's what friends do when we get angry. We want to make sure everyone else is upset as well. Or maybe you were like this person. You didn't respond, but you wanted to. And you gave the best rebuttal, the best response. No one heard it but your computer, and it made you feel better about it after you got it out, after you vented. Well, it goes without saying that social media has provided a global venue for us to come together and share ideas, which naturally invites debate and controversy. Between March 2015 and November 2016, big election year, there were over 10 billion engagements about politics just on Facebook. Now that includes likes, shares, comments, all of it. But did all of that, did it change the way people voted? According to a study by Pew Research, 82% of social media users say they never changed their mind about a candidate. 79% say they never changed their opinion on a social or political issue. All of that engagement, all of those messages, yet relatively little change of opinion. Now, there's some debate over the effectiveness of online advocacy or what some would call slacktivism. But the interesting is the more we get into these controversial topics, the more we tend to abandon everything we know about persuasion. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. When we're speaking out on an issue, whether it's a political belief or whatever it is, a cause, what are we trying to do? Do we want to make a point or make a difference? Now, we might assume that one automatically leads to the next, but that's not always the case. Making a point is easy. Just say what's on your mind. Just get it out. Making a difference, changing minds, requires an understanding of people. It also requires an understanding of how language can either advance or discredit the very idea we're promoting. Now, persuasion is a big topic, and we don't have time to go into all the ways to be a better persuader. But today I want to focus on two principles that if we will enact these principles, it will help us not just make a point, but build influence by the way we communicate. To start, we need to start from a common place. Most of the time when we're in conversations and we begin those conversations at the point of our differences, we just double down on those differences and no one is persuaded. Social psychologist Richard Cialdini, who has studied the science of persuasion, conducted a study where he took one group of MBA students who were trying to negotiate their differences, and he told them to go into a room and just start negotiating. Of that group, about 55% were able to come to an agreement. A second group was instructed to exchange information, get to know each other a little bit. That group, about 90% were able to come to an agreeable outcome. In Asia and in other cultures, it's common to exchange personal information, your family, your background, get to know one another before talking about business. Imagine if we took that to social media. What would that look like? So before talking about anything controversial, you talked about your hobbies, your family, your favorite TV show. In fact, try it. Next time you see something upsetting on social, before you lash out, just type out something like, hey, who do you think is going to win the next episode of The Voice? It'll totally throw them off. And if it's a bot or a troll, it'll really cause confusion. Now look, this is not just about being nice. It's not just about fake pleasantries and making connections just to pretend to get along. It's about establishing a position of influence. And I understand that not all issues are equally polarizing. So a debate over tariffs doesn't necessarily have the same weight as gun control or something else. And I understand that. The issues may be different, but the human aspects of persuasion are the same. And that brings me to my next point. The more divisive the issue, the more our emotions can get the best of us. So that's why it's important that we convey our ideas with restraint. Now, we all know people who will just speak their mind and they have no filter. Just whatever they think, it comes out. You're probably thinking of someone right now. They don't have the filter. They don't use it. Well, what is that filter? That filter is what tells us what we should say versus what we want to say or what's appropriate. And many times we find ourselves in that situation. So let's say you're dealing with an unpleasant person, hypothetically. Maybe you're at work and it's a rude or disrespectful customer. There's what you want to say, there's how you want to respond, but you probably don't because you don't want to lose your job. There's something that's holding you back. Or maybe you just let it go and you say, well, you just deal with the consequences. But either way, we understand that conflict. When we veer into issues that are controversial, we become less restrained and we just say what's on our mind. And that can be dangerous. That passion that we have about our issue, our cause, is good, but the passion can also undermine that cause. Because if we become unlikable, if we become abrasive, people are going to be inclined to turn away from us and everything that we are advocating. It's called the Boomerang Effect. The words can be very inspirational and motivating, but sometimes motivation comes by what is unsaid. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln wrote a very harsh letter to the commanding general of the Union Army at the time, George Meade. And in that letter, Lincoln excoriated Meade for failing to capture the Confederate General Robert E. Lee after the Battle of Gettysburg. Lincoln basically told Meade that he had failed, and because of that failure, the war would continue, and expressed his profound disappointment in General Meade. Meade never read that letter because Lincoln never sent it. Historians agree that this was on purpose, that Lincoln realized that as much as he wanted to tell Meade this, what was more important was that he didn't want his commanding general to be demoralized at such a critical time. And so Lincoln did not let his urge to respond undermine his cause, which was to bring an end to the Civil War. So a minute ago, those of you who said that when you see something you don't like on social media, you don't respond, but you want to, or you yell at your computer, or you type something out, but you don't hit send, that's basically what Lincoln did. And that might be the best response you can give. Now you might be thinking, Joe, have you been on social media lately? Have you seen the news? Do you know what's going on in the world? There are major divisions. There's political turmoil, there's unrest, there's propaganda and hate speech. Are you saying that in the midst of all this nastiness, the answer is just to be nice and be quiet? Well, the truth is, propaganda and fear-mongering and all that can be persuasive for a while. But eventually history will expose it. There's a better and more lasting way to make a difference if we're willing to play the long game. In his I Have a Dream speech, Dr. Martin Luther King said that we must conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. The fact that I'm quoting Dr. King now, and he's quoted a lot, demonstrates how language used over half a century ago is still very much alive today in the pursuit of equality throughout the world. We're going to have differences. We're going to have disagreements. We're going to argue about politics, social issues, and a slew of other things. But we might be able to narrow that gap a bit if we treat each other as human beings instead of the sum of our policy positions. Let's take on the issues of our day. Let's argue. But let's do it with the understanding that persuasion requires a personal connection and discipline. If we do that, not only will we create more civil dialogue, but we'll help ensure the points we make really do make a difference. Thank you.